Hello there, welcome to Talking Europe on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Now, as we speak, there are just a few days to go before Irish citizens are called on to vote in a highly emotional referendum, one that could liberalise the right to abortion by repealing the Irish Constitution's 8th Amendment. And the Irish government is backing the repeal. It's signalled that it would introduce legislation to allow pregnancies to be terminated up to the 12th week. Now, it's a debate that's pertinent in other parts of Europe as well. Malta, Northern Ireland, Poland, as well as Andorra, Liechtenstein, Monaco and San Marino, all name-checked as having highly restrictive laws, this in a Council of Europe report. Well, to debate the issues, we're joined today by my guests, Irish MEP Deirdre Clune of the European People's Party here in the European Parliament and the Fine Gael Party in Ireland. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Good.
We're also joined by Slovak MEP Branislav Škripek from the European Conservatives and Reformists group and with the Ordinary People and Independent Persons Party in Slovakia.
Yes.
Thanks for your time. And to give us an international angle on all of this, we're joined as well by Caroline Hickson, who's from the International Planned Parenthood Federation. Thanks for being with us.
Hello.
Now, we're going to start off, before we get into all of the many issues with our guests, we're going to bring everyone up to date on the situation in Ireland currently. This report from France 24's Marios Sofos.
We want choice!
It's a right most women in Ireland have never had. Since 1983, the 8th Amendment to the Constitution has ensured unborn children the same rights as expectant mothers. The law was altered 5 years ago after nationwide outrage over the death of Savita Halappanavar, who was prevented from ending her pregnancy.
We wanted to have the baby, but because, the baby wasn't, they couldn't, save the baby, we decided to, we requested for termination again and again. But we were told, the law there wouldn't permit.
Ireland now allows abortions only in cases where the mother's life is at risk. The Irish government has called a referendum for May 25th, asking voters if they want to keep the constitutional restriction or repeal it. Restrictions send thousands of Irish women abroad for the procedure every year and lead thousands of others to purchase abortion pills online. Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, who once described himself as pro-life, said that his views have changed and he will be campaigning for repealing the 8th.
So we already have abortion in Ireland, but it's unsafe, unregulated and unlawful. And in my opinion, we cannot continue to export our problems and import our solutions.
Repealing the 8th Amendment would clear the way for lawmakers to propose legislation allowing unrestricted abortion up to 12 weeks into pregnancy.
Well, we certainly know from having conversations with women, with men, with people all around Ireland that people really want to discuss the issue and they want comfortable spaces in which to do it. And to have a conversation based on the reality of women's lives and the reality that couples are facing in pregnancy.
A recent opinion poll in the Irish Times found that 56% of those asked are in favour of the change. But it's a sensitive issue in Ireland where many people align themselves with the Catholic Church and the pro-life movement.
I think also that stories need to be heard of families who have faced very difficult pregnancies, families who've been told that their baby was not likely to survive. And those families need to be heard in this debate because many of those decided to continue with their pregnancy and are now members of the pro-life movement.
Yet with Ireland's decline in religious practice and its legalisation of same-sex marriage in 2015, a change in its restrictive abortion laws may just be a matter of time.
Now, in Ireland, there have been many polls, of course, on this issue. The most recent one that I personally have seen has shown a split of 47% for yes or repeal the 8th Amendment and 32% for no or keeping the Constitution as it is. Others have shown much wider margins, but all show the repeal side prevailing over many, many weeks. Deirdre Clune, perhaps if I come to you first, it does sound like Ireland citizens do think that it's time to liberalise these laws.
Well, from the polls, yes, but of course, whatever how people vote on the 25th of May will be the ultimate decision. But the constitutional amendment that we're proposing to repeal is in place since 1983, 45 years now. It's there to guarantee to the life of the mother and the unborn are equal, and that has proved difficult for medics for doctors who care for women in pregnancy. It hasn't been, I don't think its intention was exactly what people thought at the time. Yes, I would think that many people in Ireland are, well, I don't like to use the word pro-life, but they respect life and value it and want to ensure that the best outcome for both. But in certain circumstances, in many circumstances, the mother's life is going to have to prevail. So it has been quite restrictive. Now the amendment will propose to repeal that, and in its place the government has proposed a legislation that they will endeavour to get through Parliament, but we don't know how that's going to progress as well. But, you know, this hasn't just come out of the blue. It's been around for a long time, and it started the last general election. The government, of the Fine Gael party that I'm a member of, promised that they would establish a citizens' consultation on the process, and that recommended that if we want to look at areas such as rape, incest, or indeed to deal with the situation we have at present whereby 3,265 women in 2016 went to the UK or other for an abortion. We have a very dangerous situation now where abortion pills are being obtained through the internet, and that is risky, and people are taking them without the support of their own GP or their doctors. So, you know, that citizens' consultation gave recommendations. That in turn then was viewed by a parliamentary committee composed of cross-section, and they've come forward with these proposals that the government is now putting to the people.
So this has gone through many stages.
Yes, it's not come out of the blue, and it's you know, it'll take time. There's a lot of a lot of information there. There's a lot of proposals there, but ultimately, I think the Irish people will make up their own mind in the privacy of the ballot box.
All right, well, perhaps if we come to our other MEP, Branislav Škripek, hearing from Deirdre Clune there, 35 years of experience with this amendment to the Constitution. We heard in the report about mothers who have died, where doctors say they could have and should have, they believe, saved this life, but they couldn't because of the Constitution tying their hands. Lots of consultation with citizens. Is it not time to liberalise this law?
We cannot say what outcome of the referendum would be, because the vast majority or biggest majority are people who are undecided at the or investigative research.
They're still looking for their decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that my colleague from Ireland can speak about a debate, because many times on the spots like this, argument is used, most extreme cases are used as a general argument. But also I have some fact-finding results, and it says that Ireland, without abortion, has one of the lowest levels of maternal mortality in the world, according to the World Health Organization. So there is no health reason to introduce abortion. But I do agree, in the case of the Indian lady, I studied the case, it was either neglectful or too cautious approach of the doctors. So it was very clear that the lady is going to die. It was no reason.
Well, let's pick up on that medical side of things, yeah.
No, I think, I mean, the proposal, I think in that situation, the doctors weren't clear. They felt that they were tied by the Constitution. And that's the issue, and that's what we're trying to address now. And it's, to say that there is no abortion in Ireland, I think is incorrect, in that we have women travelling abroad every year,
right.
and we have abortion pills coming in the internet. If we were completely isolated and didn't have access to other countries for abortion, I think we'd be in a very different situation now. So,
yes.
Well, I'd like to ask Caroline Hickson from the International Planned Parenthood Federation about this medical aspect of it. It is true that Ireland does have a low rate of maternal mortality. Can you tell us more about the medical arguments in that context?
Well, I also wanted to add that I am Irish as well as working for IPPF. I mean, I think what I first want to say is that there is just no doubt that the Eighth Amendment has caused nothing but hurt and harm and suffering to Irish women. And, you know, picking up on what Deirdre said about women who have the awful diagnosis of a fatal fetal abnormality. I mean, can you imagine a situation, you have a wanted pregnancy, you go to a doctor, you get the worst news you could possibly have. You expect care from that doctor. And that doctor says, I can do nothing more for you. So when you talk about the medical aspect, I think it's not just the woman who suffers, but time and time again, we've had doctors saying how dreadful they feel that at a moment of most vulnerability, they have to turn a woman away. They have to say, you need to carry this pregnancy until the fetus dies inside you. And up until then, we can do nothing.
So this sounds like a case of a position of conscience that is long held by many people in Ireland, with its long history of Roman Catholic culture and faith, is now being imposed on other people who don't hold that position. I think there's an argument that that's not necessarily fair.
This is the argument about the value of life and how we perceive an individual person. So we can say, and I cannot accept any argumentation that disabled people or possibly people with some health difficulties are not supposed to be born because we decide they will be killed.
Well,
I don't
feel
think
free.
this is
That's not the question at all. I mean, we're talking about a proposal whereby we can deal with fetal abnormalities. A baby that will not survive, may survive for a couple of hours, but won't survive outside birth. Now, the proposal from the government is that abortion would be up to 12 weeks. Now, you cannot detect any disabilities at that point. So a disability, I mean, I think disability is not going to happen. Abortion will be illegal post 12 weeks, save for the fact if the mother's life is threatened and if you're carrying a fatal fetal abnormality. Disability does not come into it at all, and that is completely wrong to introduce that. It has been introduced in the debate in Ireland, and it does not reflect at all the position that's been covered, because I think Ireland, we are a very caring society. There has been some very upsetting posters at the beginning of this campaign, citing Down syndrome children in particular, claiming that that's going to be the situation that we're dealing with. That is completely false and not the case. And I really think we need to be clear about what is being proposed. It will be proposed that abortion can be available up to 12 weeks, and that'll be done under the care and supervision of a medical doctor, which is where we want women and young girls to go to.
Well, and just to bring in the international context of this, this would bring Ireland in line with quite a few other EU states, wouldn't it? This is not necessarily the furthest that Ireland could be going with this law, am I correct?
No, well, you have other states who have up till 14 weeks. But just also to come in on the disability issue, I think, what we should really note is that the disability movement have come out strongly in favour of repealing the Eighth Amendment, because at the end of the day, who does the Eighth Amendment most harm? It harms the most vulnerable women. If you are disabled, you may not be easily able to get on an aeroplane. If you are disabled, perhaps in certain circumstances, it might not be safe for you to carry a pregnancy to term. So that is why, of all people, I think the most vulnerable people actually need this amendment repealed.
I mean, protecting vulnerable people, as someone who holds a strong Christian faith, that is part of Christian doctrine.
Well, vulnerable people is a baby. The one who is absolutely helpless, have no even voice, and if the right to the life of the unborn child, I think this is a very precious amendment, is removed, the government proposes to introduce a law allowing abortion without reason up to 12 weeks and abortion on health and mental health grounds up to viability around 24 weeks and abortion up to birth for serious disability. But people with serious disability, hey, I adopted a disabled child because they didn't kill him at the moment he was born.
Serious disability, it's a fetal abnormality, which is a different.
This is women who are being
the
made to
baby that
carry
won't
babies.
survive, won't survive, or may survive for a short period post-birth.
Who decides who survives? Because Bach could be deaf or mentally ill because all his siblings was mentally ill. If they would, if their parents would kill all the children on that ground, we don't have Bach as a composer.
Well, as you said, it's an extremely complicated debate.
Yeah.
It covers many issues of conscience. As we know, we don't have many time for debating these issues. But thank you all for bringing in all of these important issues. I'd like to thank you all for being with us. We're going to move on to another segment in our programme, not related to the abortion debate. We have a regular fact-checking service, if you like to see it that way, on Talking Europe. This week we have Frédéric Simon, who's been lifting the lid on some poor translations on a documentary shown in Russia talking about Denmark. Take a look at this from Frédéric Simon.
It was a forced translation which ended up in a diplomatic row. That, in a nutshell, is the story of a TV report about Denmark, which was aired by Russian public broadcaster NTV in February this year. The report's aim was to denounce the supposed hysteria of Danish authorities who recently installed a radio mast to intercept Russian military communications in the Baltic Sea. However, interviews used in the report ended up rather transformed after they had been through the subtitling services of NTV. Danish politicians interviewed by the channel did express concern about Russia's military presence in the Baltic Sea. But the subtitles shown on Russian TV seriously distorted their words, with some participants later denouncing the entire report as fake news. The whole affair took a diplomatic turn when the Russian embassy in Denmark issued a statement on Twitter pretending the interviews had simply never taken place. And indeed, the interviews had been deleted from a later version of the report published on the NTV website. A divergence that some commentators playfully highlighted on Twitter, showing screenshots of the earlier version broadcast in Russia.
Well, there we go. And that does round off this week's edition of Talking Europe. I'd like to once again thank my guests from our debate on the upcoming Irish referendum on repealing the Eighth Amendment, liberalising abortion rights in Ireland. We've been joined by Deirdre Clune from the EPP. Thank you. Branislav Škripek from the ECR group, and also from the International Planned Parenthood Federation by Caroline Hickson. Thank you all very much for your time, for your insights on this most thorny and controversial of debates. That's it for our programme this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in part 2 just after the news.
The Debate, hosted by François Picard.
Live from Paris, a debate on the big story of the day with experts, newsmakers and observers. Continue the debate after the show is over by sharing your views on our forums.
The Debate on France 24 and France24.com.